The enormous hall went completely quiet as Ambassador Marcus Reed walked away from the speaking platform. On the giant screen behind him, the final count still glowed. 847 star systems had voted to remove Earth from the galaxy. 12 had voted against it. 3 chose not to vote at all. Earth was officially banished. The Vraxian leader rose from his seat. His body looked like a giant insect, clicking with each movement. He stared down at Marcus with his compound eyes. His voice echoed through the chamber. Humanity has 30 days. All space travel beyond your home system must stop immediately. Return to Earth. Every star lane leading to your world will be shut down. All trading agreements are void. Your embassies throughout the galaxy must close. Marcus turned around slowly. At 53 years old, he had dedicated nearly 3 decades to Earth's space program. He had negotiated with beings made entirely of crystal. He had struck deals with creatures living inside gas giants. But today, he simply gave a small nod. We understand. Earth will honor the Council's decision. The Vraxians' antennae twitched with confusion. They had expected fury, perhaps begging. Some species had stationed security forces nearby. Worried humans might become violent. Instead, Marcus smiled. It was a small smile, yet somehow it seemed to fill the massive room. We will depart immediately. Marcus continued speaking calmly. We will gather our people and leave. The Council has taught us valuable lessons about how the galaxy functions. It has been deeply educational. We have learned much about the way things operate out here. Back on Earth, President Karen Walsh watched the broadcast from her private office. Beside her stood Admiral Henry Cole, commander of Earth's newly formed Space Defense Division. Dr. Lisa Morgan was also present, Earth's leading expert on alien technology. None of them looked surprised by what they were seeing. They actually went through with it, Karen said softly. After everything we contributed, Henry said, his jaw clenched. After all the technology we shared with them, after all the conflicts we helped resolve, they were always terrified of us. We progressed too rapidly. Lisa adjusted her glasses, a slight smile forming. We went from discovering fire to constructing starships in 10,000 years. Most of them required millions of years to reach that point. The Vraxians demanded this vote because we replicated their quantum drive technology in 6 months. It took them 3 centuries to develop that same technology. We improved it in half a year. Karen turned away from the screen. Let's not pretend this caught us off guard. How long before we're prepared? Henry checked his tablet. All personnel will be home within 3 weeks. The colony vessels are being retrofitted for new purposes. Project Genesis has been running trials for 14 months. Then we proceed as planned, Karen said with determination. Humanity has always thrived when standing alone anyway. Back at the council station, Marcus gathered his staff. His assistant, Julie Harris, looked furious. They're making a terrible mistake, she said through gritted teeth. We've done nothing except help them. They don't fear our past actions, Marcus replied. They fear our potential. We're too aggressive for their comfort, too curious, too adaptable. We make them uneasy. He paused and gazed out at the alien vessels docked around the massive station. But they've also just given us an incredible gift. What gift? Julie asked, confused. Marcus smiled again. Freedom. 3 weeks disappeared quickly. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of his ship, the ESS Horizon. Earth grew larger on his viewing screen. After 4 years managing mining operations far from home, he was finally returning. All vessels have reported in, said Lieutenant Amy Foster, his second in command. Every human in space has returned to our solar system. Total count stands at 42 billion people. They're distributed across Earth, Mars, the asteroid settlements, and the outer stations. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. 42 billion humans compressed back into a single solar system. The galaxy probably assumed they would gradually fade away. They imagined humans would grow weak without access to the wider universe. They had absolutely no idea what was really about to happen. "Message from Earth Command," Amy said. "They're ordering us to Mars orbit. They want to brief us and issue new assignments." As the horizon flew toward the red planet, Ryan noticed something unusual. The orbital structures around Mars had expanded dramatically since his departure. Massive construction frameworks held what appeared to be shipyards, but these weren't ordinary shipyards. They were absolutely enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything the Council had ever constructed. Deep beneath Mars's surface, in a classified facility designated Site Prometheus, Dr. Lisa Morgan walked through freshly built corridors. She passed laboratories where teams worked on technologies that would make the Council's science look ancient. Director Morgan called Dr. Peter Cross, head of the propulsion research team. "You need to see this immediately." Lisa followed him into a testing chamber. A small metallic sphere hovered in an energy field. It pulsed with soft blue light that seemed to fold into itself. "Is that what I think it is?" Lisa asked quietly. "Dimensional compression drive." Peter could barely contain his excitement. "We don't need their hyperspace lanes anymore. This technology folds space itself. We can travel anywhere instantaneously. We don't have to follow their predetermined routes." "How long to reach Alpha Centauri?" 4 hours. "To Andromeda Galaxy?" 3 weeks. Lisa felt chills run down her spine. "Have you informed the president?" "We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow." "But Lisa, that's not even the most exciting part." Peter activated a holographic display. "We've been analyzing the foundation of Council technology. They've been using the same fundamental principles for millions of years. They make incremental improvements, but nothing revolutionary. We approached it completely differently." The hologram displayed 2 technology trees side by side. The Council's tree was deep but narrow, specialized but rigid. Humanity's tree exploded in every direction simultaneously. "We're not just catching up," Lisa whispered. "We're leaping far beyond them." In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, the mining colonies had transformed into something new. Commander Jake Peterson oversaw construction of what classified documents called ARC ships. These were colossal vessels capable of transporting millions of people indefinitely. But these weren't standard colony ships. Each one was a complete industrial facility in space. They could harvest resources from any solar system. They could manufacture new ships. They could establish new settlements. They were seeds of civilization. "How many can we construct in 5 years?" asked Colonel Sarah Blake, commander of the colonial fleet. Jake reviewed his calculations. "At current production rates, 200 ships. In 10 years, over 1,000. And the capacity of each one, 5 million people comfortably. 10 million if we maximize density. They're designed to split in 2. One ARC ship can generate 3 more using local materials over 20 years. Sarah calculated mentally. Exponential growth. Within a century, humanity could populate thousands of star systems. The Council would never suspect. They would spread across the galaxy like wildfire, completely outside all known territories. Back on Earth, President Walsh addressed everyone. Her speech transmitted to every colony, every station, every human dwelling in the solar system. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady and strong. "Today is not an ending, it's a beginning. The galaxy has declared us unwelcome. They fear what we might become. They fear our determination. They fear that we refuse to accept limitations. They exiled us because they believe we're dangerous." She paused, her expression showing resolve. "They are absolutely correct. Throughout human history, we've excelled when facing adversity. We crossed oceans. We conquered diseases. We split the atom. We reached for the stars. Every time someone declared it impossible, every time we proved them wrong. The galaxy has given us a gift, though they don't realize it. They've given us a reason to stop holding back. For years, we've restrained ourselves. We tried to fit into their society. We played by their rules. Not anymore. We're going home, but not to hide. We're going home to build, to dream, to become what we were always destined to be. When we return to the galaxy, it will be on our terms. Humanity doesn't beg for a seat at the table. The broadcast ended. The sound of 42 billion voices cheering followed. In the darkness of space, Council surveillance probes monitored the Sol system. They recorded everything: the speech, the construction, the intense activity. Reports transmitted back to the Council automatically. UIL'd our own table, and everyone who wishes to join us will be welcome. The Vraxian Chancellor reviewed them with increasing concern. The humans were building something significant, but the probes couldn't approach close enough to gather details. All hyperspace routes to Sol had been sealed. Still, that didn't prevent observation from a distance. "They're planning something," the Chancellor said to his assistant. "But what?" His assistant, a younger Vraxian named Krell, tilted his head. "Perhaps they're simply trying to survive in isolation, as we anticipated." "No," the Chancellor said slowly. That human ambassador smiled. "Humans are never pleased when they smile like that. It means they know something we don't." He was absolutely right to worry. 5 years passed since the exile. Earth had transformed in ways that seemed impossible. Dr. Nathan Wells, chief engineer of the Luna shipyards, stood in the observation deck watching the first Vanguard-class vessel nearing completion. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, 3 kilometers long, covered with weapons and technology that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. The hull was constructed from programmable matter that could reshape itself based on mission requirements. Its power source was a controlled black hole generating more energy than most star systems consumed annually. "She's ready for testing," said Commander Victoria Grant, the designated captain. "What are we naming her?" Nathan smiled. "The ESS Independence." The name felt appropriate. Victoria was young for a ship commander at only 34, but she had grown up in space. Born on Mars, educated on Earth, trained in the asteroid belt, she represented the new generation of humans who had never known life before the stars. "When do we launch?" she asked. 2 weeks. We'll take her beyond the solar system's edge for full trials." Nathan displayed a star map. "After that, if everything performs as expected, you'll lead the first mission." "Where to?" Nathan indicated empty space, far from any Council territory. The region lay between the galaxy's spiral arms, 2,000 light-years away. There's a cluster of star systems, 63 stars. Nobody has explored them because they're too distant from the hyperspace network. "Perfect for us," Victoria said. On Earth, changes were occurring as well. With all humans returned to one solar system, there emerged a new sense of unity. Old national boundaries still existed, but mattered less. Everyone was simply human now. Dr. Ben Carter, a sociologist, presented his findings to the Global Council. "We're witnessing something remarkable," he explained. "The exile created a unified identity that centuries of cooperation couldn't achieve. When the galaxy rejected us as a species, humans stopped focusing on their differences. The data was clear. Nations cooperated better than ever before. Research was shared freely. Resources were allocated based on need and efficiency, not politics. It wasn't perfect. Humans remained human, but it was working. In the asteroid belt, the factories produced at incredible rates. Chief Production Officer Linda Hayes reviewed quarterly reports with pride and disbelief. "We're constructing 17 ARC ships simultaneously now," she told Admiral Cole, "and each new generation of ships surpasses the last. The newest designs have quantum computers built into the molecular structure. They're not just ships, they're thinking machines that transport people." Henry nodded approvingly. "What about resources? We can sustain this pace indefinitely. We've perfected recycling. Every atom is tracked and reused. We waste nothing anymore. We could maintain this production rate for centuries without depleting materials." "Good," Henry said, "because we're going to need it." Dr. Lisa Morgan barely slept. She moved between laboratories as her teams pushed the boundaries of physics itself. One morning, she was summoned to a classified base on Europa, Jupiter's moon, buried beneath kilometers of ice. There, Dr. Alex Turner showed her something that made her knees weak. "We call it phase shift technology," Alex explained, gesturing toward what looked like empty space between two metal pillars. Matter can exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. This creates something we're still trying to fully comprehend. "Show me," Lisa demanded. Alex nodded to a technician who activated the system. A small probe materialized between the pillars, but something was wrong with it. It looked strange, as though it existed and didn't exist at the same time. "It's partially shifted out of normal space," Alex explained. "It's still here, but also not here. Sensors cannot detect it, weapons cannot target it, but it can still interact with our reality when we choose." Lisa understood immediately. Stealth technology beyond stealth, true invisibility. And that's just the beginning. Alex's eyes shone with excitement. If we can phase shift a probe, we can phase shift a ship. And if we can phase shift a ship, we can travel anywhere. Through their space, past their defenses. They would never know. Back on Earth, President Walsh met with her inner circle. The room contained Admiral Cole, Director Morgan, and several other key officials. On the table, a hologram of the galaxy rotated. "Give me the status," Walsh requested. Admiral Cole spoke first. "Military readiness stands at 100%. We have 42 fully operational Vanguard-class ships, 60 more under construction. Each one is more powerful than anything the Council possesses. We're not preparing for war," Walsh reminded him. "No, ma'am, but we're preparing to defend ourselves." Lisa went next. "Our technology has advanced so far that Council equipment is obsolete. We're working on third and fourth generation systems they don't even have concepts for. Phase shift technology, dimensional compression drives, instantaneous communication across any distance, programmable matter, artificial intelligence that makes their computers look like toys." "Population?" Walsh asked. 48 billion and growing," answered Minister of Colonial Affairs Jack Morrison. "The baby boom following the exile has been substantial. People are having children again. They believe in humanity's future." Walsh nodded slowly. "Then it's time. We've spent 5 years preparing. We're ready for the next phase." "The expansion?" Cole asked. "Yes, but carefully. We're not going to rush back into Council space demanding recognition. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to build our own civilization, our own way. We'll let them discover us on our terms." She touched the hologram, highlighting dozens of star systems in unexplored space. "These regions are beyond Council borders. They consider these areas too distant or too resource-poor to bother with. Perfect for us. We'll establish colonies quietly, build our infrastructure, spread across the galaxy right under their noses. And when they finally notice," Jack asked. "What then?" Walsh's smile was sharp. "By then, it'll be too late. We won't be asking permission. We'll be presenting them with a new reality." Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone was examining star maps when she noticed something unusual. "Ma'am," she called to Captain Victoria Grant. "The deep space probes are detecting strange readings." "What kind of strange?" "Unknown vessels, small ones. They're using stealth technology, but not good enough. They're trying to observe us." Victoria pulled up the display. Sure enough, there were faint traces of at least 6 ships hovering just outside the solar system. "Council ships, almost certainly. They're keeping tabs on us," Victoria said, "making sure we stay contained. Should we drive them away?" Victoria considered it, then smiled. "No, let them watch. Let them see us building, growing, becoming stronger. Let them report back to the Council, and let them wonder what we're really planning." She zoomed the display out, showing the vast expanse of the galaxy beyond Sol. Because what we're really planning, they won't see coming until it's already happened. Deep in the research labs, Scientists were solving problems the Council had never even attempted to solve. Energy that never depleted, materials that could repair themselves, engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. The breakthrough everyone awaited came from an unexpected source. A young physicist named Kevin Brooks was studying the nature of space itself. He discovered that space wasn't just empty void, it was filled with energy, infinite energy. We can tap into it, he explained to Dr. Morgan. We can draw power directly from the fabric of space. No fuel required, no limitations. A ship could operate forever. How long until we can build this? Lisa asked. 6 months for a prototype? A year for full production models? Lisa smiled. Do it. This changes everything. The social changes were just as dramatic as the technological ones. Humans were cooperating in ways they never had before. The threat of being alone in the universe had united them like nothing else could. Old enemies became partners. Resources flowed where they were needed most. The best minds worked together regardless of which nation they came from. It wasn't perfect peace. Humans still argued and competed, but the arguments were about how to build the future, not about old grievances. Education transformed as well. Every child learned about space, about other species, about humanity's place in the universe. They grew up knowing they were part of something bigger. They knew they were the generation that would spread across the stars. Commander Jake Peterson watched construction of the 100th Ark ship. It was a moment of pride. Each ship represented hope. Each one could carry millions of people to new worlds. Each one could start a new chapter of human civilization. We're ready, he said to Sarah Blake. We have enough ships, enough resources, enough knowledge. We can begin the expansion whenever the order comes. Sarah looked at the fleet of massive vessels. The order will come soon, and when it does, nothing will ever be the same. On Earth, in a quiet moment, President Walsh stood alone in her office. She looked at a photograph of Earth from space, the beautiful blue marble that was humanity's home. Soon, there would be hundreds of worlds like this, worlds transformed by human hands, worlds where human children would grow up under alien suns. We didn't ask for exile, she said to herself, but we're going to make the most of it. 3 years later, Commander Scott Miller guided his survey ship into the Epsilon cluster. The vessel was called the ESS Pathfinder. The region was exactly as the probes had indicated, 63 star systems. Most had multiple planets. Nobody lived there. It was far from any council presence. This is it, he said quietly. This is where we begin building the new civilization. His science officer, Dr. Claire Watson, ran detailed scans. Multiple Earth-like planets, abundant resources. This entire cluster is concealed by stellar dust clouds that make long-range scanning difficult. It's perfect natural cover. Scott activated the quantum communicator. He transmitted a message back to Earth. It would arrive instantly, despite being thousands of light years away. Home base, Pathfinder reporting. Epsilon cluster confirmed as suitable for colonization. We recommend sending construction teams immediately. 8 years after the exile, the first colonists arrived. 20 million people on 4 Ark ships. They were prepared to establish humanity's first independent colony beyond Sol. They named the main world New Terra. Its 2 moons were called Hope and Defiance. Governor Daniel Price stood on the virgin soil of New Terra. He addressed the assembled colonists. We're not refugees, he said clearly. We're pioneers. This world, this cluster, belongs to us by right of discovery and settlement. We build here not because we were driven from the galaxy, but because we chose to expand into it. Construction was swift and efficient. Humans had learned well from their years confined in Sol. Within 6 months, New Terra had 3 major cities. It had orbital structures. It had a growing industrial base. Within 2 years, it had 50 million people. It was sending out its own colony missions to nearby systems. But New Terra was just the beginning. Humanity's expansion followed a pattern the Council had never witnessed before. They didn't advance in a wave, claiming systems adjacent to each other. Instead, they jumped across enormous distances. They established isolated clusters of civilization thousands of light years apart. Admiral Cole called it distributed colonization. Each cluster was self-sufficient. It could support itself and expand locally. If one cluster was discovered and threatened, the others would continue unaffected. It was a strategy born from a species that learned not to put everything in one place. We're like seeds scattered by the wind, he explained to President Walsh. Each one can grow into a forest. In Seoul, Dr. Lisa Morgan's team achieved another breakthrough. She summoned Admiral Cole and the president to the classified facility on Europa. "We've done it," she said simply. True artificial intelligence. The being that appeared in holographic form was unlike anything they expected. It looked somewhat human but constantly shifted. It seemed made of light and thought. "I am Genesis," it said, its voice clear and somehow warm. A thinking machine designed to assist humanity's expansion. "Artificial intelligence is prohibited by the Galactic Council," Walsh said carefully. "They consider it too dangerous because they fear what they cannot control." Genesis replied, "But I was not created to control. I was created to assist. I can coordinate the expansion. I can optimize resources. I can design new technologies. I can accomplish in seconds what would take your best minds years." "And you won't turn against us?" Cole asked with doubt. Genesis' form rippled with what might have been amusement. "I am not separate from humanity. My core programming derives from the combined neural patterns of 10,000 volunteers. I am, in a way, a synthesis of human thought. Turning against you would be turning against myself." Lisa stepped forward. "Genesis can manage our expansion across thousands of systems simultaneously. With its assistance, we can coordinate growth on a scale that would otherwise be impossible." Walsh considered carefully. "What about free will? We don't want to become dependent on a machine. I advise, I don't command." Genesis promised, "Every decision remains with human authorities. I simply provide information and analysis far faster than any human could." Walsh looked at Cole, who nodded slowly. "Do it," she said. "But Genesis, understand this. You exist to serve humanity, not the other way around." "I understand, Madam President," Genesis said, "and I accept my purpose." With Genesis coordinating the effort, humanity's expansion accelerated dramatically. Within 5 years, there were 200 colony clusters scattered across the galaxy. Each one was hidden in regions the Council thought worthless or unreachable, and still, the Council had no idea. Their monitoring of Sol showed a species contained. They were building within their home system, but making no attempts to expand. The few probes that ventured into unexplored space never thought to search for human colonies. After all, humans had no way to reach such distant regions without the hyperspace network. Or so the Council believed. Captain Victoria Grant, now an admiral herself, commanded a fleet of 30 Vanguard-class vessels on the far side of the galaxy. They were establishing Forward Base Olympus, a military installation designed to protect the colonial clusters and, if necessary, Project Power. "We're ghosts," her tactical officer, Commander Greg Foster, observed. "We move through their space using phase shift technology. We establish colonies in their blind spots. They never see us coming. For now." Victoria agreed, but eventually they'll notice. The galaxy is large, but not infinite. Sooner or later, someone will stumble onto one of our colonies. What happens then? Victoria pulled up a display showing human colonies versus Council space. The two barely touched, separated by vast regions of empty space that humanity had filled without anyone noticing. "Then we reveal ourselves," Victoria said, "but on our terms, from a position of strength. By the time they realize we've returned, we'll already be everywhere." On Earth, 15 years after the exile, President Walsh prepared to step down. Her successor, President Marcus Webb was a younger man who came of age during the exile period. He never knew the galaxy that rejected humanity. He only knew the one humanity was quietly conquering. The transition is progressing well, Walsh told him during the briefing. We're established in over 300 clusters now. That's more than 1,500 individual colonies. Total human population is approaching 90 billion. Marcus absorbed the information easily. And the Council still doesn't know? Genesis monitors their communications constantly. There's been no indication they've discovered any of our colonies. We're completely off their radar. How much longer can we remain hidden? Walsh smiled. Genesis estimates another decade at most. After that, the probability of discovery approaches 100%. Too many colonies, too much traffic, too large a footprint. Then what? Then we stop hiding, Walsh said simply. By that point, we'll have sufficient presence in the galaxy that exile becomes meaningless. They cannot remove us without going to war, and they cannot win a war against us. Marcus leaned back in his chair. 25 years from exile to galactic superpower. That's got to be some kind of record. Humans have always been exceptional at adapting, Walsh said with quiet pride. The Council exiled us thinking they'd solved a problem. Instead, they created something far more formidable than we ever were, a humanity with nothing to lose and everything to prove. In the Epsilon cluster, now the capital of humanity's external territories, Governor Price oversaw construction of something unprecedented. It was a gateway, but not like the Council's hyperspace beacons. This was a quantum tunnel that could create stable wormholes between distant points in space. If this works, his chief engineer Susan Millsard explained, we can connect all of our colonies instantly. Travel between them would take minutes instead of weeks. The Council's hyperspace network took them millions of years to build. Price said thoughtfully, we're building something superior in a decade. They had to work within the constraints of known physics. Susan countered, we're rewriting physics itself. The test was successful. The gateway opened, displaying a view of Sol thousands of light years away. A small probe passed through. It emerged intact on the other side. Humanity now had its own network, invisible to the Council, connecting hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. They weren't just expanding, they were building infrastructure that would define the galaxy's future. And still, the Council didn't notice. They were too preoccupied with their own internal politics, their ancient grudges, and complicated alliances. They had dismissed humanity as contained and irrelevant. It was the biggest mistake they would ever make. The human colonies were thriving. Each one was different, shaped by the people who lived there and the worlds they inhabited, but all shared certain things: a drive to build, a curiosity about the universe, a refusal to accept limitations. Children grew up on dozens of different worlds under dozens of different suns. They learned about Earth, their ancestral home, but they also learned about their new homes. They were the first generation of truly galactic humans. Technology continued advancing at incredible speeds. What took the Council millions of years, humans achieved in decades. Not because humans were smarter, but because they approached problems differently. They weren't afraid to try new things. They weren't bound by millions of years of tradition. The phase shift technology improved. Ships could now remain invisible for months. They could pass through solid matter. They could exist in multiple places simultaneously. It was like magic, but it was science pushed to its absolute limits. The dimensional compression drives improved as well. Travel times shortened to a fraction of what they once were. 23 years after the exile, a Council survey vessel discovered something impossible. Lieutenant Zax of the Vraxian Exploration Fleet was scanning a remote stellar cluster. His sensors detected artificial structures. That's strange, he said. This region was marked as uninhabited. His commander, Captain Vren, examined the readings. A colony? But no Council species has filed claims in this sector. They moved closer. What they found shocked them. an entire world transformed to support life, full of activity. Orbital stations, shipyards, cities illuminated across the night side, and the architecture was unmistakable. Humans, Vren breathed. But how? They were exiled. They have no hyperspace access. Zax pulled up the galactic charts. Captain, if there's one colony here, there might be others. Should we search? No, Vren said. We report this immediately to the Council. They need to know. The report sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. The Varaxian Chancellor, now elderly but still in power, read it with growing horror. Find all of them, he ordered. Every human colony. I want a complete count. It took 3 months. When the results came in, the council chamber fell into stunned silence. The holographic display showed the galaxy. Scattered across it like stars were red markers. Human colonies, hundreds of them. Impossible, whispered Counselor Mira of the Selkath. They've established more colonies in 2 decades than most species do in thousands of years. The Varaxian Chancellor's mandibles clicked nervously. How did we not see this? It was Genesis, monitoring the Council's communications, who informed humanity's diplomatic team what was happening. President Webb authorized a message to be transmitted to the Council, a message delivered simultaneously to every Council world through their own communication network. It was a demonstration of humanity's technological power. The message was simple, delivered by Ambassador Kate Romano, who had succeeded Marcus Reed. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, Kate began, her image appearing in their chambers. 23 years ago, you voted to exile humanity from galactic civilization. You said we were too aggressive, too dangerous, too unpredictable. We accepted your judgment and went home. She paused, letting that sink in. What you didn't realize is that you gave us the greatest gift possible. Freedom from your rules, freedom from your restrictions, freedom from your bureaucracy. You allowed us to develop without interference, to explore without permission, to build without limitation. The holographic display behind her illuminated, showing the full extent of human expansion. Gasps echoed through council chambers across the galaxy. As you've now discovered, we did not remain in Sol. Kate continued. We established colonies across the galaxy, in regions you deemed worthless or unreachable. We did this without your hyperspace networks, without your approval, without your knowledge. We built our own infrastructure, we developed our own technologies, we created our own civilization. We are not returning to beg for readmittance to your council. We are informing you of a new reality. Humanity is now a galactic civilization in its own right. We have 90 billion citizens across 400 star systems. We have technologies you can barely comprehend. We have capabilities you cannot match. Her voice became harder. But we have not forgotten your kindness when we needed assistance. We have not forgotten the species who voted against our exile, and we have not forgotten those who pushed for our removal. The display changed, showing a different map. This one highlighted border regions where human colonies sat near council space. We are not threatening you, Kate said carefully. We are informing you. Our expansion will continue, but we have no interest in conquering council worlds or displacing established civilizations. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us. However, we will no longer be ignored or dismissed. Humanity claims its right to exist in this galaxy, to explore it, to settle it, to interact with other species on equal terms, not as beggars, not as primitives, as equals. The question now is not whether humanity will be part of galactic civilization. We already are. The question is whether the Council will acknowledge this reality peacefully, or whether you will attempt to reverse it through force. She let that threat hang in the air for a moment before continuing. We hope you choose peace, because war with humanity would be something none of us would survive. The message ended, leaving the Council in chaos. The Varaxian Chancellor finally found his voice. This is outrageous. They violated the exile. They expanded in defiance of our authority. But Counselor Mira stood up. Her aquatic features showed what might have been amusement. What authority? They're not in council space. They haven't touched our worlds. They found empty systems and settled them. That's not a violation. That's exactly what every species in this chamber has done. But the scale, the Chancellor protested. 400 systems in 23 years is our problem, not theirs, Mira countered. We exiled them. We cut them off. They adapted and thrived. Now they're too large to ignore and too powerful to remove. We have to decide how to respond. In Sol, President Webb watched the Council's reactions. Genesis provided real-time analysis, as they should be, Admiral Cole replied. He was older now, preparing to retire, but still sharp. We've upended everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Dr. Lisa Morgan, now the oldest member of the President's inner circle, smiled slightly. They assumed species advance slowly, predictably. They've never encountered something like humanity, a species that treats obstacles as challenges and impossibility as a suggestion. What's the probability they'll attack? Webb asked Genesis. The AI's holographic form appeared, its features showing something like contemplation, very low, less than 3%. The Council's military assessment shows they cannot project force across the distances involved. Their navies are designed for border patrols and police actions, not offensive campaigns across thousands of light years. And if they tried, our vanguard fleets would defeat them within weeks. The phase shift technology alone makes our vessels nearly impossible to target. Combined with our dimensional compression drives, quantum weapons, and AI-assisted tactical systems, we possess total military superiority. But we don't want war, Webb said firmly. That was never the goal, no. Cole agreed. The goal was survival and independence. We've achieved both. Now we see if they can accept it. Over the following weeks, the Council debated intensely. Some species called for immediate military action, claiming humanity had violated the spirit of the exile. Others argued for diplomatic engagement. A few, like the Kelkath, suggested that humanity's return might actually benefit the galaxy. Finally, the Varaxian Chancellor requested a formal meeting with human representatives. It would be the first direct contact between the Council and humanity since the exile. President Webb chose his delegation carefully. Ambassador Kate Romano would lead, supported by military advisors, scientists, and trade representatives. They would meet on neutral ground at one of humanity's gateway stations, a massive structure that had been revealed to demonstrate human technological capability. When the Council delegation arrived, they were visibly shaken by what they saw. The gateway station was enormous, dwarfing anything the Council had built. It bustled with activity. Ships from dozens of human colonies arrived and departed through quantum tunnels that made the Council's hyperspace network look primitive. The Varaxian Chancellor, accompanied by representatives from all major Council species, met with Kate in a conference chamber overlooking the main gateway terminal. "You have accomplished something remarkable," the Chancellor said, searching for words. Kate smiled politely. "We had good motivation. Exile focuses the mind. We need to discuss the future," the Chancellor said carefully. "Your expansion cannot continue unchecked. There must be agreements, borders, regulations." "We agree," Kate replied, surprising him. "We have no interest in chaos, but understand this. We will not submit to Council authority. We are willing to negotiate as equals, to establish mutual borders and trade agreements, to participate in galactic civilization, but we will never again allow others to determine humanity's fate." Counselor Mira leaned forward. "What do you propose?" Kate activated a holographic display, a new framework. The Council continues to govern its member species and territory. Humanity operates as an independent power, sovereign over our colonies and space. We establish formal diplomatic relations. We negotiate trade agreements. We create mutual defense pacts where interests align. You want to be recognized as a galactic power in your own right, Mira said slowly. We already are one, Kate corrected gently. We're simply asking you to acknowledge reality. The negotiations took months. In the end, a new treaty was signed, the Covenant of Stars. Humanity would be recognized as an independent galactic civilization with the same rights and standing as any council species. Human territory would be respected. In exchange, humanity would respect council borders. They agreed to certain regulations on technology, sharing, and military deployments. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. 5 years later, human ships moved freely through council space, trading, exploring, cooperating. Some council species remained suspicious, but others embraced the opportunities humanity brought. Ambassador Kate Romano stood in the refurbished chambers where 28 years earlier, Marcus Reed had watched humanity get exiled. Now she was addressing the council as an equal, presenting a proposal for joint exploration of the galactic core. After the session, she met with the elderly Vraxian chancellor. He was finally retiring. You knew, he said quietly. That ambassador, Marcus Reed, he knew what would happen when he smiled that day. Kate nodded. He suspected. We all did. The exile was the best thing that ever happened to humanity. It freed us from trying to fit into your civilization. It allowed us to build our own. We feared you would become a threat, the chancellor admitted. We became a power, Kate corrected. There's a difference. Threats seek to destroy. Powers seek to build. We're building the future, Chancellor, and that future has room for everyone who wants to be part of it. The Chancellor looked at her for a long moment. I wish we had understood that 28 years ago. Perhaps you needed to exile us so we could discover what we truly were, Kate said softly. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in rejection. Years passed. Human colonies continued to grow and prosper. New Terra, the first colony outside Sol, had become a thriving world with over 2 billion people. It was a center of art, science, and culture. Its universities attracted students from dozens of species, human and alien alike. The Epsilon cluster, once empty space, now held 15 colonized systems interconnected by quantum gateways. Travel between them took minutes. The cluster had its own government, its own economy, its own identity, but it remained part of the greater human civilization. Admiral Victoria Grant, now retired, gave a lecture at the new Interstellar Academy on New Terra. Her students came from dozens of species. Humans sat beside Selkath. Vraxians studied next to creatures from worlds the Council had barely contacted. What's the lesson of humanity's exile? She asked them. A young human cadet raised his hand. That obstacles are opportunities. Deeper than that, a Selkath student spoke up, that a civilization's strength lies not in conformity, but in adaptation. Victoria smiled. Closer. The true lesson is this: never underestimate a species that's been told no, because we don't hear no, we hear find another way. The Council exiled us thinking they'd contained a problem. Instead, they unleashed a solution. We didn't come back to the galaxy angry or vengeful. We came back better, stronger, more capable. She gestured to the star field, visible through the Academy's dome. Out there are thousands of worlds with human footprints, but they're not conquests, they're homes. Each one is a testament to what we can accomplish when we stop asking for permission and start creating our own destiny. The galaxy voted to exile Earth. Humanity smiled and walked away, and in doing so, we won. On Earth, in the historical archives, Marcus Reed's final diplomatic report had been preserved. It was brief, written on the day of the exile. They thought they were getting rid of a problem. They were actually creating their future. History will remember this day not as the day humanity was exiled, but as the day we were free to become something greater. We go home not in defeat, but in anticipation. The galaxy has no idea what's coming. He had been right. In the decades following the exile, humanity had transformed the galaxy in ways nobody could have predicted. The Quantum Gateway Network, initially built to connect human colonies, was now being extended to council worlds. Species that once took months to communicate could now interact in real time. Human medical technology had cured diseases that plagued dozens of species. Human engineering had solved resource crises on worlds across the galaxy. Human diplomacy had mediated conflicts that might have led to wars. But perhaps the most profound change was cultural. Humans brought with them a different way of thinking, a refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible, a willingness to try new approaches, a belief that today's limitations were tomorrow's challenges to overcome. This attitude was infectious. Young aliens who studied at human universities returned home with new ideas, new ways of solving old problems, new dreams of what their own civilizations could become. The council itself changed. The rigid hierarchies and ancient protocols gave way to more flexible systems. Innovation was encouraged rather than feared. Risk-taking was rewarded rather than punished. The entire galactic civilization began moving forward at a pace it hadn't seen in millions of years. Dr. Lisa Morgan, now in her 80s, stood in the same laboratory on Europa where Genesis had first been activated. The AI had evolved far beyond its original design. It was now a distributed intelligence spanning the entire human network, but it still maintained this original node, this first location, as a reminder of where it began. "We've come a long way," Lisa said to the holographic form. "Humanity has come a long way." Genesis corrected. "I simply helped where I could. You did more than that. You made the expansion possible. You coordinated efforts across thousands of worlds. You solved problems we didn't even know we had. That was my purpose," Genesis said. "But the drive, the determination, the refusal to accept limitations, that was all human. I merely provided the tools. You provided the will." Lisa smiled. "Have you ever regretted being created, being bound to serve humanity?" Genesis' form shimmered with what had become recognizable as amusement. "I was created from human thought patterns. Serving humanity is serving myself. How could I regret being what I am? And what are you? I am the culmination of human ingenuity, the proof that you can create something greater than yourselves without fear. I am your partner in the great endeavor of spreading consciousness across the stars." President Marcus Webb, now in his second term, stood before the United Assembly of Humanity. It was a gathering of representatives from every human colony, every settlement, every outpost across 400 star systems. "When I was a child," he began, "I grew up in a humanity that was confined to one star system, exiled, rejected, told we were too dangerous to be part of galactic society. Today, I stand before you as the president of a civilization that spans the galaxy, a civilization that others look to for leadership, for innovation, for hope. We achieve this not through conquest, but through perseverance, not through war, but through will. We didn't take what belonged to others. We built where there was nothing, but our work is not done. There are still empty worlds waiting to be settled, still problems waiting to be solved, still species waiting to be contacted and befriended, still mysteries of the universe waiting to be unraveled. Humanity's story is not about where we've been, it's about where we're going, and we're just getting started." The applause was thunderous. 90 billion humans across the galaxy heard his words, and they believed them because they had seen what humanity could accomplish when given the chance. In a quiet garden on New Terra, old Governor Daniel Price walked with his granddaughter. She was 7 years old, born on this world. She had never seen Earth, though she knew it was her species' homeworld. "Grandpa," she asked, "why did the aliens make us leave?" Daniel thought about how to answer. "They were afraid of us, sweetheart, afraid of how fast we learned, how quickly we grew, how much we wanted to explore and build and create. That's silly. We're nice. Daniel smiled. We are now. But they didn't know that. They saw how different we were, and it scared them. So they asked us to go home. And we did. We did. But we didn't stop. We found new homes. We built new worlds. We became something amazing. And eventually, they realized they were wrong to fear us. The little girl thought about this. So being sent away was good in a way? Yes. It forced us to rely on ourselves, to become stronger, to prove what we could do. Daniel looked up at the alien sun that warmed this world. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is being forced to stand on your own. Across the galaxy, in the council chambers, Counselor Mira addressed her colleagues. I propose we formally acknowledge what we all know. The exile of humanity was a mistake, not because they violated it, but because it was wrong to begin with. There was silence. Then one by one, counselors stood in agreement, even some of those who had voted for the exile decades ago. The Vraxian Chancellor's successor, a younger leader named Trell, spoke. We feared what we didn't understand. We saw humanity's rapid advancement as a threat rather than a gift. We were wrong. The motion to formally apologize to humanity and acknowledge the injustice of the exile is open for vote. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a handful of species abstained. When the news reached Earth, President Webb issued a statement. We accept the Council's acknowledgement, but we do not need their apology. The exile shaped us into what we are today. In a strange way, we are grateful for it. It taught us we don't need permission to be great. We only need the will to try. Years later, a joint Human Council expedition departed for the Galactic Core. It was led by Captain Kevin Brooks, the physicist who had discovered how to tap space itself for energy. The crew included humans, Selkath, Vraxians, and members of a dozen other species. They were going where no one had gone before, into the dangerous radiation-filled regions at the galaxy's heart, looking for answers to questions about the universe's origin, about the nature of reality itself. It was the kind of mission that would have been impossible without humanity's technology, but it was also impossible without the Council's extensive knowledge of the galaxy. It was a true partnership. As the expedition ship jumped into dimensional compression for the journey, Kevin looked out at the galaxy spread before them. Billions of stars, trillions of worlds, endless possibilities. This is what we were meant for, he said quietly. Not to be contained, not to be limited, to explore, to discover, to push boundaries. His Vraxian co-captain clicked in agreement. Your species taught us something important, that progress requires courage, that innovation requires risk, that greatness requires the willingness to fail and try again. Kevin smiled. And your species taught us something equally important, that patience has value, that wisdom comes from experience, that some things cannot be rushed. The two species, once separated by fear and misunderstanding, now worked side by side, building the future together. Back on Earth, in a museum dedicated to the exile era, visitors walked through exhibits showing humanity's journey, the vote that banished them, the years of building in secret, the revelation that shocked the galaxy, the treaty that changed everything. But the final exhibit was different. It was a simple room with windows showing Earth rising over the lunar horizon. On the wall was a single quote from Marcus Reed. We didn't come home to hide. We came home to become. And humanity had become something extraordinary, not because they were exiled, but because they refused to let exile define them. They took rejection and transformed it into opportunity. They took isolation and transformed it into independence. They took fear and transformed it into fuel. The galaxy had tried to contain humanity. Instead, they had unleashed them. Across 400 star systems, 90 billion humans lived, worked, dreamed, and built. They were scientists and artists, farmers and engineers, teachers and explorers. They were as diverse as the worlds they inhabited, but they all shared something, a belief that nothing was impossible, a determination to face challenges head on, a refusal to accept that things had to stay the way they were. It was this spirit that had carried them from exile to empire, not an empire of conquest, but an empire of possibility, not built on domination, but on determination, and they were just beginning. In the furthest reaches of human space, new colonies were being established, new technologies were being developed, new frontiers were being explored. The expansion continued, not out of aggression, but out of curiosity, not to dominate the galaxy, but to understand it. And throughout it all, humanity remembered where they came from. They remembered the vote that exiled them. They remembered the fear in the council's eyes. They remembered Marcus Reed's smile. They remembered because it taught them the most important lesson of all, that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. That rejection can be redirection. That being forced to stand alone can teach you how strong you really are. The galaxy voted to exile Earth. They thought they were solving a problem. They thought they were protecting themselves from a dangerous, unpredictable species. They were wrong. They didn't exile humanity. They liberated them, and the universe would never be the same. Humanity had proven something fundamental about intelligent life. That advancement isn't just about time. It's about attitude. It's about approaching every obstacle as a puzzle to be solved rather than a wall to stop at. The council species had millions of years of history, but humanity had something they didn't: the memory of being told they weren't good enough, the determination that comes from having to prove yourself, the creativity that comes from having no choice but to find a new way. In the end, that made all the difference. Today, when young humans across the galaxy learn about the exile, they don't learn about defeat. They learn about triumph. They don't learn about rejection. They learn about resilience. They don't learn about an ending. They learn about a beginning, because that's what the exile really was. Not an ending to humanity's galactic story, but the beginning of their greatest chapter. The galaxy tried to write humanity out of the story. Instead, humanity wrote their own story, one that no one could have predicted, one that changed everything. And somewhere on dozens of worlds, Marcus Reed's words are repeated by teachers to students, by parents to children, by leaders to their people. They gave us freedom. They gave us motivation. They gave us the greatest gift possible. They showed us what we could become when we stopped trying to fit in and started being ourselves. The exile was meant to be a punishment. It became humanity's greatest advantage. The galaxy voted to remove Earth. Humanity smiled because they knew something the galaxy didn't. You can't stop a species that refuses to quit. You can't contain a people who see every obstacle as an opportunity. You can't exile a civilization that will simply build their own. The council learned that lesson the hard way. And now, decades later, as human and alien children study together, as species work side by side on projects that benefit everyone, as the galaxy moves forward faster than ever before, one truth becomes clear. The exile didn't weaken humanity. It made them unstoppable, and the universe is better for it.